But I want to start just your story, man. How'd you get to where you are from where you were being however far back you want to go?
Okay. Yeah, we can do all of that. Whatever you want to ask, I'm down for it.
You can go ahead and answer if you want.
Oh, are we recording?
Yeah, I'm recording. Well, so yeah, this is what I love.
Okay, yeah.
No, so basically, yeah, my bad. I mean, I don't even care. This will be on there anyways. Basically, what will happen is I'll do a post intro and just like superimpose it. It'll go right into it. So yeah, if you want to start with your story, go ahead.
Yeah. I was raised on a reservation in South Dakota, Lakota Sioux, and that was very much an earth centric culture that I grew up in. But even living on the reservation and being a part of that tribe, I was always kind of picked on as a kid because like it was almost like I was too white for the Indian kids, and then I came to public school out in Iowa, and I was too Indian for like white kids. So I was like I never fit in wherever I was. So eventually, when we moved off the reservation, we came to Iowa. I went to high school here in Iowa, and then I went to school for a few years, got a couple of degrees. I studied physics, and I, I I found myself wanting to do something that really like applied my background, like what I was really interested in, which was science. Like it's always been my baby, and eventually I stumbled upon this whole grounding thing, and that was something that really allowed these three important things in my life to kind of mix and mash, which was science, spirituality, and my culture. And I don't necessarily relate my culture to my spirituality because they're a little different. But so yeah, it's a really cool thing when all those things can kind of come together, and I'm able to work in these three different domains and keep the main focus grounding, which is being electrically connected to the earth.
Man, that's awesome. I'm glad you touched on the reservation because I have never actually spoken to anybody who was born and spent any time on a reservation. I've read handfuls of books like Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. That's one of my favorite books. In American Buffalo by Steve Rinelli, he speaks on it. But I've always been fascinated by American Indian culture, and I'm curious to know how that. And now that you're removed from it a little bit, how did growing up and being born on a reservation in America today, how did that impact you?
So I mean, it's going to be different for everybody, and a lot of reservations are so different as far as what they can offer, as far as resources and what's available to people as far as furthering themselves. I grew up on a reservation where there wasn't a lot of opportunity. There wasn't a lot of resources. Money wasn't managed very well. Um, Thankfully, I was born into a really good family that took care of each other. But as far as opportunity and stuff out there, a lot of my family members ended up in gangs. A lot of them ended up shot. So I feel if my mom didn't take me off the reservation, I probably would have ended up doing what my cousins were doing, which was joining gangs and getting involved with drugs and all that. So they're not nice places, at least on my side of the spectrum. And I don't go there very much too often anymore. Every once in a while, I'll go see some family, or I'll do a running camp or something for some kids. But other than that, I just stick to Iowa. It's my reservation. It's not a place I want to really go visit for vacation or anything. So
Yeah. Well, so I think a commonality between a lot of people in America, maybe the entire world nowadays, is we're like removed from our culture and our heritage. And I don't know, I just have this reverence for the amount of focus that most, if not all, American Indian tribes placed on the earth, and then also just their culture as a whole. It was very important to them. Is that something that, even if the reservation isn't something that you necessarily like associate super heavily with, is the actual Lakota Sioux
yeah.
part of you? Is that something
Yeah.
that you really dig
Absolutely.
into.
That was the cool part. That was the cool part of growing up and all that was the actual culture. Is that I grew up in a very traditional ceremonious ceremonious environment, and I was constantly put into these ceremonies, these sweat lodges, these sweat lodge prayers, um, these sun dances, and at these sun dances, which are an annual event in my culture. I would watch my family, dance for days and days and days, and they would either be barefoot or in moccasins, and I feel like I would watch them and just kind of be in awe on the side because I was too young. I was too young to be doing it, and I would watch my mom dance for days, and I was like, how is she still dancing like after the last 8 hours, and she's able to do it like 3 days in a row. And it didn't really click back then, but it's like these guys are grounding, and they understand. They don't, I mean, they don't see it from a technical standpoint like I do, but they see it from a spiritual standpoint, and that's really what's driving them forward, is that connection to the earth that they hold so high in their beliefs, in our beliefs. And I went on to become a Christian later in my life, and grounding, I still believe, is a very big part of that faith. But yeah, the culture was extremely rich, and I'm extremely thankful that I was able to grow up in something like that.
Right on. And that you just mentioned thankful. I saw you posted something either yesterday or the day before, um, speaking about when you pray in the steam room, I guess,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the thankfulness prayers. What are those about? Like what is that?
Yeah, and man, I love the steam room. It's super anabolic. A lot of people talk crap about the steam room, and it's like, go in sauna, it's hotter. I mean, really, how's your body perceiving it? Steam room feels hotter to a lot of people, so what's really happening. But yeah, and that's a huge thing when I pray in my relationship with God. It's all about just being thankful. There's never a day that I don't wake up feeling like absolutely blessed and thankful. Like, I have a bed to sleep on. I have a roof over my head. Like, I can drink coffee right now. I can sit on this computer that I was able to afford and talk to you about grounding. I have a car to drive. There's so many things to be thankful for. Like, just little tiny things. The fact that I can see and hear and taste. Like, there's so many things that are overlooked in everyday life. And every day, those are the things that I pray about. It's not often that I deviate outside of that, but just, I think, having just a really thankful heart, that's really what's gonna move the needle in your life. It's really what's gonna multiply things.
Totally. And I love, like, the video you posted was awesome.
Mm.
It's so true. We take so many things for granted, like the fact that we're even on the computer right now talking, the coffee,
Mhm.
all these things we take for granted. But it's when we take those intentional seconds. It really doesn't have to take long. The however many minutes you're in the steam room, and you just take that time and say, you know what, there are a ton of things that I'm thankful for. There are also things that may not be where I want them to be, but that doesn't mean that there's not an overwhelming amount of things to be thankful for. And I think you even might have said it, like, that's when you become thankful. It's like you basically tap into the abundance of the world and of God. So I appreciated you sharing that yesterday on your story.
Yeah, man.
The thing that anybody that follows you will notice immediately. I mean, obviously you mentioned, like, the grounding, GAIA, but track specifically. You train a lot for track. Like, what is that about? Are you still competing? Did you compete in college?
Yeah, I ran for a few years in college, and then I got out of college, and I kept training, and I got faster when I left college because, like, I kind of I took everything in my own hand, and I got, like, really obsessed with it, and I kind of perfected, like, the perfect program for me, and it started to go really well. And then I ran professionally for a couple of years, and I was traveling around the country competing at different meets, winning money at some of them, which was pretty nice. But yeah, I compete in the 400 meters, so I travel around. I compete at these big college meets, and run the quarter mile. But it's fun. Like, it's the race that I run isn't it's not fun. Like it's a really hard race, and a lot of people hate it because it's really painful in the ass and the legs. But I like it because like you need a good amount of speed, but you also need endurance. So it's just like you got to be fast, but a lot of it comes down to who can tolerate more pain at the end. And so when you're able to get good at the 400, like there's a lot of pride that comes with that. It's just like I'm really good at this thing that kills a lot of dudes. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, track was my first baby, and I still do that. I train that 4 days a week. On my off days, I'm usually doing like mixed martial arts or something. So very active lifestyle. So
Yeah, the you mentioned the martial arts.
yeah.
I saw a video of you and Noah Ryan on the beach, and I
Yeah.
also think a picture on. I think he got you in a triangle there.
He got me in a
What,
triangle, dude.
oh, no.
And Noah's a super strong dude.
Yeah.
He's like a little monkey. He just wraps himself around you. And like I just started jujitsu pretty much this past year. I don't do it as frequently as I do striking because that's how I got into mixed martial arts, is through kickboxing. I've been doing that for a couple years, and I took my first fight like 2 months like into training for kickboxing, and it went okay. I mean, I won it, and then my coach was always just like hounding me about doing jujitsu, and so like a year after I started striking, I started doing jujitsu, and I still don't really like it as much as striking, but it's not as exciting to me, but it's a super useful skill to know.
Yeah. I always find it interesting. I've been training jujitsu for a little bit over a year, and I was a baseball player in college, so baseball is like my first baby. I just absolutely loved it. Wanted to go pro, didn't go pro. Needed something to fill my time and to like pursue jujitsu. Kind of fell in, and I always find it interesting. I think there's like everybody has a special love in their heart for their first martial art, like the one that gets introduced them to. So I don't find that to be surprising. Also, like I feel like striking is maybe a little bit more relatable to the 400 and track specifically because it's quick, it's very explosive. Jiu-jitsu, I feel like could probably be maybe actually, you know what, I was rolling with a black belt the other day actually, and he goes something along the lines of he chose jiu-jitsu because it's the laziest martial art. Like he hates working out.
That sounds very, very accurate. I feel like I've heard the guys at my gym kind of say a similar thing, because it's just like you can there are a lot of like really bigger guys that do jujitsu. They're just kind of like a little bit chubbier, you know, they're able to get away with it just because they're like they're technically sound at it. But yeah, I totally agree with what you said. Striking is just, for me, I really like the precision of it. You just got to be really, really coordinated and really efficient with it. I mean, you got to do the same thing with jujitsu, but yeah, striking will always be my baby as far as starting out with mixed martial arts.
There's a picture on your Instagram. I think it looks like you just won a fight. Maybe it's in the middle of a fight. What was that? Because that's a pretty damn cool picture.
Yeah, that was after my first fight, and I've only had one fight thus far, but I was super stoked about it, and I was just like I was on top of the world. It's just like, you know, I was hardly training for. I mean, I was training really hard for that 2 months, like leading up to that. But yeah, that was my first win, so I was super stoked about it. And then like during that time while I was training for that fight, like I thought I was retired from track. Like I thought I was done with it. So after that fight, I started training with some of my buddies again, and I was like, man, I'm still fast. So it's like, let me just compete at a few meets, and then I got hooked back into track again. So I'm kind of like, now I'm just balancing both of them. And now I'm a lot more smart about it too. I'm able to figure out when to put what to where I'm not getting like overtrained or injured or something. So.
Well, like I said, I think there's some interesting correlations, like some crossovers in the training. I really do think that sprint training would 100% help with striking, and maybe not as much striking to track or sprinting, but you may be able to speak a little bit into that. But it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I have to tailor it a certain way. So like it's kickboxing, so I have to tell my coach like, hey, I can only box today because I have this tomorrow at the track, and he's super cool with it. But yeah, there's especially like when you're constantly moving around in the mats, you're constantly like developing that elasticity in your Achilles and all that, and that's super transferable over to track. There's probably things like way beyond that, but I don't notice a ton as far as like detriment from training one and how it transfers over to the other. But I feel great. What I So I was like 190 pounds last year, and now I'm like 169. So
Holy cow.
I lost a lot of weight, and I feel amazing. Like I feel amazing on the mats. I feel amazing when I'm running, and going from that to what I am now, kind of really changed my perspective on the gym, like lifting weights and all that. And because I used to be just like a huge gym rat, I was just like, I'm gonna find like everything that I need to be a better athlete in the gym, and that just like wasn't the case. And I feel like it's a very common misconception in a lot of athletes today. I've seen a lot of athletes get ruined in the weight room.
100% baseball specific. That's a phenomenal point, and I think that more people need to, or not need to, more people would benefit from becoming aware of that. It's a supplement to the main thing. It's not
Yeah,
the main thing, and I think
yeah,
so many people, especially in like team sports and college sports, they get trapped into like the team, like culture building part of the weight room. So they put like so much emphasis on it, and then literally it detracts from your training in the specific sport or whatever else you're training in. So I agree with that completely. Once I made the switch from like it's a supplement, it's ancillary to add to the main thing, it's not the main thing, I actually noticed significant gains.
totally agree. I would feel, and I lift like once a week now, dude. I
Mince or
um,
pill, maybe even
yeah,
far along there.
4 days a week. The other days I do mixed martial arts, but like one day I'll do like a contrast lift, like a heavy concentric mixed with eccentric, mixed with iso with like some plyos, and like that's it. Like I'll take that and get my little stimulus, and I'll come back next week. But I feel so much better just doing my sports, and I move so much more fluid and more efficient. But yeah, that was a big mindset change for me. You know, past 3 or 4 years.
Right on. And I want to get into grounding, but I want to get a little bit more clear picture on your story, if that's all right. I love
Yeah.
finding out about like how people just become the way they are. And you mentioned something earlier about how you felt too white for the Indians and too Indian for the white people. How did you reconcile that at a young age? And like, where do you think that led you?
Yeah. So it was like when I was on the reservation and I was growing up on that. It was like everybody wanted to fight me. I was just like, I don't know why. Like, I don't look like an intimidating like kid. Like, I don't know why everybody wants to fight me, but I just like, I guess I just looked so different than everybody else that like everybody just like wanted to like, antagonize me or something. And then we got a wrestling program, and so like I started doing wrestling, and then a lot of these guys that were like bullying me on the reservation, like they would come to wrestling, and like I would like rip them apart, and like from there, like things got so much better. Like not so much because like I was like mogging them now, but it's just like there was a respect now. And I don't know why it was the way that it was when I was growing up there, but getting that wrestling program definitely helped build my confidence. It helped build my discipline, and then from there, I went to a school in Iowa, and I left the wrestling thing behind because I was tired of it, and then I moved on to track, and I wasn't, so like I went to a school that there were so many kids that you actually like had to try out for the track team. And like my first year trying to try out for track, I showed up in like these blown out like skate shoes and all that. And like one of the tests to get onto the track team is you had to like run down a straightaway hallway against another kid. And like I wasn't even fast enough to like make the track team. And like, 15 years later, like I would be considered like one of the world class like 400-meter runner. And so it's kind of like a rags to riches as far as like athletic story. But yeah, I don't know. And it was it was much easier for me to fit in when I went to a public school in Iowa. So like there was much more diversity out here. You know, you have black kids, you have Hispanic kids, you have Asian kids. You know, what's an Indian kid added to that? But on the reservation, it's the demographic is a lot more. It's a lot more narrow. You know, it's just mostly Indian kids. So, but yeah, it definitely sucked growing up, but it turned me into the person that I am today, which is very accepting of other people. And I know what it's like to be singled out for how you look and for being, you know, if you look a little different than other people. So I totally get that.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about the wrestling. I feel like there's so many stories like that, because something about specifically men and specifically young men, it's like the physical confrontation. It's like people can bully and bully and bully, but until there is a way for that to be actually manifest, and then you get your fair shot and people are like, oh shit, this guy's legit, like tip of the cap, maybe we'll like keep our distance now, we'll at least have that respect. It's one of those things, like at the very end of every male confrontation is the possibility of physical confrontation. So it's like once you reach that physical confrontation and realize the other guy's about it, it's kind of like tip of the cap, I got you.
Well, I think a lot of problems could be solved by just letting a couple dudes fight it out. Let them duke 100%. It out. Let them wrestle. Like, I guarantee you, like, all that pent up like energy they have for each other, wanting to beat each other's ass. Once they get that out and they wrestle each other and they do whatever they want to do, once they get done with that, like the camaraderie after that is just like it's a whole nother level. And honestly, like a lot of dudes become friends like after they fight, and it's a very interesting phenomenon. But I can totally get it, and I can understand it. So
yeah, no, I think Noah Ryan even spoke about this on our episode where he had like this gym nemesis, and now they're like good friends.
Yep.
Because it's that exact same thing, man. You gain this respect, and you just realize that maybe you're not so different from the other person after all. Yeah. It's the great equalizer. So that's awesome.
I agree.
This is what I meant when I said you're a very interesting follow, at least. You have this athletic pursuit that it's a very high level athletic pursuit. And then you have this witty writing, and you obviously have the company, and then you'll post pictures of you reading like whatever the fuck the formula is. I don't even know what. I just saw numbers and letters all mixed together on a page. I'm like, I don't even know if this is a front, but it sounds like you've got the scientific background, man. How did that come about? Was that something where you kind of just fell into it, or did you realize that you wanted to try to draw the connections between your like the Lakota?
I studied physics, which is a pretty rigorous educational background. I went to undergrad school, I went to graduate school, and I was in pursuit of my PhD in biophysics when my business took off. And so business took off. I didn't really have time for anything. So just like, I need to go all in on this thing. And I might go back to school once all of this kind of settles down, because there's a few projects that I'm still working on. But science is really kind of where my heart is. And when I found out about grounding, I was hearing it from people that they would describe it to me, and I didn't really like how it was described, because like it wasn't very convincing. Like they would just be like, oh, you know, go be barefoot and it's anti-inflammatory, bro. Like it's good for you. And then, you know, I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, why? Like, why is it good for me? Can you tell me why exactly? Like, it's going to help me. And so like from there, I kind of wanted to become like a spokesperson for it. Like I wanted to break this stuff down for people like me that are asking like these kinds of questions and want to know what's going on exactly. And, you know, 4 years later, I'm still doing that. And I really got started doing what I'm doing, making like long format videos, like 15-minute videos, basically breaking down the mechanistic properties of, you know, why this is doing what it's doing to your body and why it's so important to be doing it. But it's, you know, it's really cool though, because it does tie in my educational background with my culture, because like, you know, looking back, I was always told, stay close to the earth. The earth is sacred. The earth is healing. As a kid, I'm just like, I don't know what that means exactly, but I'm gonna believe you. And then 20, 25 years later, I'm able to learn about this stuff and really put things together with it and write a book about it. And it kind of all came together perfectly. So
Yeah, I actually just wrote that down. It's like a synergy. It's like
yeah.
it was like a way for you to connect that maybe the middle to later part of your life thus far with the early childhood experiences. That sounds like a perfect sort of a perfect culmination of things. And well, I know you've got we spoke about this a little bit yesterday. I'm sure you could go into ridiculously minute details, but I kind of want to start on the top because I would consider myself more or less an idiot. I have like a general understanding of grounding and some physiological mechanisms and all that. But so I was that guy, just, like I was like, you should be grounding. Why? It's good for you. It's like end of conversation. I can't say anything else. So what is grounding for the uninitiated?
Yeah. Grounding is being in electrical contact with the surface of the earth. And that is either by direct means, just being outside, being barefoot directly on soil, concrete, or it's inside. It's an indirect method. You can be on grounding mats, grounding sheets, which are still connected to the surface of the earth via a grounding rod that's outside of most buildings and homes.
Right on. So what does, because I mean, for me, I'm a little bit, I'm very far past the point where that doesn't sound gimmicky to me at all. I'm sure there is probably billions of people in the world that still think like, oh, okay, that's eyewash.
Yeah.
But for me, the way that I mentioned this before on the podcast, I like to think through things from a tribal lens, like from a ancestral lens. Okay, for the overwhelming majority of human existence, we have touched the earth more often than we have not touched the earth. And I mean, like with our bare skin. That makes sense to me that I should be doing that too. I don't really need much science behind it.
Yeah.
But for those people that are like, okay, that's gimmicky. Look, I'm doing X% well in my life and I don't touch the earth. What would your discussion with them be? What would you encourage them or tell them?
Yeah. And, I've had to wrestle with this for quite some time now. How do I approach this in a way, that doesn't scare people away right off the beginning? And I usually begin that with their home, their actual electrical system. So electrical systems are grounded to the earth for stability, for safety, to protect equipment, to protect people from that are using that equipment. So essentially what that ground connection does is it allows excess electrical energy from damage. So like if there's a short circuit or something, it provides a path for that excess electrical energy to dissipate into the earth. If that connection wasn't there, the equipment would get damaged, and there's that potential of shocking the person that's actually using that equipment. And so I always like to approach it from that standpoint because this is very much grounded in science practice in the electrical industry. And it's not very different from how the human body works, because the human body is very much an electrical being. And so just like your electrical systems, your appliances and everything that's plugged into your walls, your body needs to be connected to the earth as well. And that allows excess electrical energy to be dissipated into the earth, and that contributes to the body's electrical homeostasis. And when you hear of homeostasis, you don't really think of, electrical homeostasis a lot. You kind of think, balance as far as, whatever physiological process that you can think of. But electricity, the electrical aspect of it is a very, very important part of it too. It allows all these other physiological processes to function optimally and efficiently.
So what happens to the body, or you could even go on a cellular level, what happens when we don't have the ground to dissipate that excess electrical energy into?
So that's that we would call that being insulated from the earth. So you're not in electrical contact with the earth. So what happens when you're not getting that contact with the earth? Well, this allows it doesn't allow your immune function to function as it's meant to function. you get a buildup of a lot of inflammation, oxidative stress, which are two processes that are very much implicated in the number one killers worldwide, and that's chronic non-communicable disease. So that would be your cardiovascular disease, your neurodegenerative, your diabetes, your cancer, all of those. These are very much involved with the processes of inflammation and oxidative stress. And where grounding comes into it is particularly on the oxidative stress side of things. But essentially, in an insulated state, your body can't fight off the things that it needs to fight off in an efficient and grounded way. And when you're grounded, it allows your body to fight off these things much more easier and as it's meant to.
Totally. And I don't know why it is. I guess it's just the way the world works. Like, I don't need to hear, like, I really don't need to hear all that stuff. I just know that we've been touching the earth for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. That's all I need to know. And then it makes sense to me. Same thing can be said for diet, in my opinion, and overall lifestyle, light exposure, all these things. We're both drinking methylene blue. I don't know if you still are, but
Yeah.
is there a, I've had two conversations with Vance on the podcast, and we've kind of dove into that. It sounds like there may be some crossover or some synergy between methylene blue and grounding. Is that the case, or am I mistaken in thinking that?
So grounding or not grounding, methylene blue can act as an antioxidant, and so there are these things called reactive oxygen species in the body, which a lot of people know as free radicals. So, have you heard of free radicals before?
Yep.
Yeah, they're essentially just they're these molecules with unpaired electrons in their outer orbitals that just kind of they go around the body and they steal electrons from other molecules and kind of create this chain reaction, which ultimately leads to oxidative stress. So those are created in a couple different ways. One way is through immune function, NADPH oxidase, literally breaking down molecular oxygen to get rid of pathogens. And another way is through mitochondrial respiration. So when we breathe in air, that air is utilized, and ultimately what happens is during cellular respiration, when you get to the electron transport chain, you have these series of protein complexes within that inner mitochondrial matrix. So electrons are kind of just they're shuffled across these protein complexes, and where oxygen is going to act as this terminal acceptor of these electrons. But when these electrons essentially get leaked out of this electron transport chain and interact with oxygen, it creates this thing called superoxide anion, which is a very potent free radical. And so where methylene blue kind of comes into the equation, it essentially soaks up these leaked electrons and shuttles them to molecular oxygen, which is the terminal electron acceptor. So methylene blue is a very potent antioxidant. And so that's how I was able to approach methylene blue. There are obviously benefits that extend far beyond that, and Vance will probably tell you a lot more about that. But how I see it is a very potent antioxidant. But I have my opinions on chemical antioxidants versus conductive antioxidants, and that's a whole nother conversation. But it's a very good at soaking up those leaked electrons from the electron transport chain.
Conductive antioxidants being grounding?
Yeah, so when you ground, it's free electrons, free mobile electrons coming into your body.
That
so
we're absorbing from the earth.
Yes. Yep,
which has a negative charge, correct?
Negative charge, yep. And those are going into your...
Could you dive into why the earth has that charge?
Yeah, for sure. And this is something that I call it's called other things too, but I like to in the book I call it the Earth circuit. So a big question that we have to ask ourselves is why is the Earth's surface negatively charged? Like, why are we able to connect to this immediate negative entity in our environment, and what contributes to that? And there are some main contributors. One is solar radiation coming into the atmosphere and literally ripping molecules apart, and that's in the ionosphere. It ionizes them, and then these ions get kind of moved around the atmosphere through ionospheric winds. But the biggest way is through lightning. So through thunderstorms and lightning discharges. So in a lightning cloud, a thunderstorm cloud. There's a separation of charges within that cloud, between the top of the cloud, the middle of the cloud, and the bottom of the cloud. And this is actually, it's really complex science, and they're still kind of studying this. But when the charge separation gets great enough between these charges within the cloud, it'll reach this critical threshold, and it'll create this lightning channel that essentially it creates a lightning discharge. And so what that does is it allows electrons to be transferred to the Earth, positive charge back up into the upper atmosphere, into the ionosphere. So that's a really big one. And at any moment, there's like 1,000 to 2,000 thunderstorms going on around the world. And that's thousands of lightning strikes happening every second. And then on top of that, you have elements within the actual Earth's crust, like uranium and thorium, that are emitting these alpha, beta, and gamma particles. In particular, these beta particles can contribute to the Earth's negative surface charge. So you have all these different things interacting with each other to maintain this surface charge. But it's a really cool phenomenon. It's a really, really complex science, and they're still doing a lot of work with that, because there's some things about that are still that are not understood fully yet. But it's been well established that is a negative surface charge. Yeah, and that's what we connect ourselves to, hopefully every day, that allows us to reap many of the benefits that come from being grounded.
Yeah, and I keep harking back on it, but Laird Hamilton said this. I think he said it on the Joe Rogan podcast. He said, "Yeah, man, I usually follow my intuition, and science follows that. Like, science finds a way to prove my intuition right." And it's the exact same thing, because you mentioned early on that you're the Lakota. It's very earth oriented. It's connecting with the earth, and they don't know what, like you mentioned it. They don't know the science, or they didn't. Maybe they do now. They don't know about the science of why the earth is negatively charged, what that negative charge does with us. They just know that it makes them feel better when they are connected to the earth. And now it's cool to see you and people like yourself, not exposing, but relaying the scientific findings that are just confirming that intuitive response.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And I would expand that even further. Like, a lot of cultures around the world, like a lot of ancient cultures, what did they have? They had intuition. But guess what? Like, they were still being proven right. Like, up to today, it's just, we're just kind of catching up from a technical standpoint. They already kind of knew what was going on. Maybe they couldn't provide the scientific basis for it, but they still knew what was going on, and that things were good for them. And sometimes, that intuition is good enough. So.
Absolutely. And just from a practical standpoint, like, and then I'm sure this kind of relates into GAIA and your business, but what are some things, like, I'm sitting on my feet are on a hardwood floor right now, so I'm not grounded. What are some common things for people that, like, are interested in this whole grounding thing, don't really know how to get grounded other than just going on grass? Like, what other things can you be grounded through and from? You mentioned the bed sheets. I know concrete, there are some grounding properties in concrete. I don't know if there's some specific ways, if it's poured or laid, but what are some common things that are insulated versus grounded?
Yeah. And I enjoy this question, because it's a very common question, and really just comes down to electrical conductors, insulators. So if you can, and really a lot of that's just a Google search away. Like, you look up the surface that you're standing on. Is this material electrically conductive? Yes. Then is it in electrical contact with the earth? Yes. Well, you're grounded. But a lot of it comes down to what those materials are made of, as far as, conductors and insulators. And, conductors, they hold on to their electrons really loosely. So this allows electrical energy to pass through it fairly easily. And then insulators, they hold on to their electrons really tight. It makes it really hard for electrical energy to get through it. So what are some common examples of conductors? Metals, a lot of metals. What are, common examples of insulators? That would be, wood, glass, plastics, a lot of synthetic materials. So, a big one I get asked a lot is, asphalt and cement. So asphalt is it's if you really go into the actual properties of asphalt, it's mainly a petroleum based polymer, which is it's very insulating. But if you look at cement, what is it mostly made of? It's mineral and water being mixed together. And especially when it's wet, when it's in contact with the earth, it's electrically conductive. So a lot of that comes down to just figuring out if the surface is a conductor or an insulator. And then beyond that, once you figure that out, you usually a lot of people ask the question, well, how am I able to ground in my home? Well, they make these very specialized materials, usually some kind of carbon polymer that can be plugged into your home's electrical grounding system. So it's literally connected to the ground rod outside your building or your home. And but I would always recommend that people actually test their outlets with an outlet checker before they plug anything into their wall. That's very important. An outlet checker and a multimeter would be super cheap, useful things to have. You should just have them anyway because they're very useful things to have. But that allows you to verify if the ground is actually ground, and that's usually indicated by a voltage reading of roughly zero volts or a few negative 100 millivolts.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you talk about like I mentioned, I'm not like super scientifically inclined, right? But when you think about rubber, that's an insulator, correct?
Yep.
When you think about it being, basically you said they hold their electrons very tightly. They don't allow the electrons to pass through.
Yep.
So that's basically, they're holding all the energy. It's not allowing the whatever energy is on what other side, it's not allowing it to get through because they hold on to them. Whereas a conductor, it kind of just, whatever's on one side, it just passes through because they don't hold on to those electrons.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes.
That makes intuitive sense. I mean, that just makes sense.
Yeah, that's what a lot of science is. It's just like, oh, well, that's seems like common sense. So it's like,
wait,
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like they just need equations to like verify it and all that stuff and equipment. So
you mentioned water. So I mean, my understanding also from Laird Hamilton. I don't know if he mentioned any science from this. That's my favorite. That's one of my favorite podcast episodes of all time. If you've never had the chance to listen to it, the ocean is one of the most powerfully, I don't know if it'd be charged forces in the world. Is that correct?
Yeah, the ocean has a ton of minerals, and then on top of that, it's water. So this is just kind of this conductive, like supercharged entity in our immediate environment. Well, not my immediate environment, whoever's close to the ocean and the sea. So
yeah, I was not. No oceans near Iowa, but that actually brings up a good question. Like streams, rivers, lakes, is that the same or no?
Absolutely. That's grounding times 1,000. It's I mean, you're still going to end up at the same likely the same body voltage being in that natural body of water versus being on soil, but it's just a much more efficient way of doing it, and it's a much more kind of guaranteed way of being grounded. With in urban areas, you're not always guaranteed like a good ground because you can never really tell like what's underneath all this concrete, what's underneath the soil. So but usually with natural bodies of water, it's usually kind of already pretty deep in the ground. You have that mineral content to add to the conductivity of the water, in addition to the water itself. But you can, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you can ground in the water, and it's a great way to ground.
Yeah, and to bring up Laird Hamilton, hopefully for the last time in this conversation, but in that podcast, he talks about how, and maybe you can relate to this, the most chill people, we have this assumption of like the chill beach person. He thinks it has to do with the fact that they're just constantly in contact with like this powerful grounding force. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it has a mental or maybe even a temperamental effect or no?
Yeah, I mean, you're likely dealing with highly parasympathetically driven people, which is one of the mechanisms by how grounding impacts the nervous system, particularly the autonomic nervous system. But yeah, I mean, you're by the beach, you're probably getting a ton of sunlight. Like you're probably happy. You're in nature. Like that's probably how I'd be. I mean, I'm already kind of pretty chill, but like probably how I'd be if I was in that environment. Like if I was just a poor like hippie like bum just living, you know, off the beach, that's probably how I'd be. I'd probably be super happy.
Yeah. My brother always says if shit hits the fan, he's just going to start a coffee shop in Costa Rica. And
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure we'd all be pretty stoked about that, honestly.
yeah, yeah.
It
I
kind of
was
makes me question why I don't do that already.
I was in the freaking jungle in Mexico with Noah and just ripping ATVs to get food and water. But I kind of started to miss it, man. Like I think we definitely take for granted like all of our conveniences that we have here. Like just the fact that I can drive my car 5 minutes to get to a Target or a Walmart and get like whatever I need, like whatever I need. And on top of that, Amazon and all that too, you know, online resources. It's just like we have so many things here in the States that are so nice and convenient to have. And honestly, man, I started to miss that a little bit. So it's just
Yeah.
like when I was in Mexico, I was just like, shit, can I get like a liquid IV or something? Like I'm so dehydrated from all the tequila I drank last night. Like it's nice to have those conveniences.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely an interesting balance because I feel like there's one end of the spectrums like in New York City where you could literally have anything you wanted in a second. Like
Yeah.
literally just whatever the fuck you want it delivered to your house, you don't even have to leave. That brings with it its own sets of problems. And I would argue or not argue, I would posit that those sets of problems are actually more detrimental than a lack of convenience
Yeah.
in terms of like not having a liquid IV. I know that was an example, but like just random stuff. Like I went on a couple mission trips to Guatemala and same type deal. It's like, okay, well, I can only drink water that's out of these bottles. I can't wash my plates with water that's out of the spout. Like just all these things. You're like, damn, I do kind of
Yeah.
miss just not being able to do stuff that I'm typically doing. So, but I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's something to be said for the removal of all those things in your life and why that could make somebody more chill in that environment because there's all these stimuli and all these stressors and all these things that we may seem that we own, but in fact maybe really own us that add to our stress level that are all deleted more or
Yeah.
less when we go to a Mexican jungle environment.
Yeah, there's you gotta find the right balance. You know, not too frivolous, not too, you know, materialistic, but yeah, man, I don't need a lot of things in my life, but definitely being able to drive to a grocery store that's in like within like 10 minutes
Yeah.
and just get clean water and and clean food and well, as clean as you can get, but that's definitely a convenience that I enjoy here in the States.
Yeah,
Being able to
and
drive my car. So
yeah, you got a sweet ride. What do you drive?
yeah, that's a SRT 392 Dodge
Right
Challenger.
on. Are
Yeah,
you a car guy? Is that something you've always been into?
I'm not like a huge like car snob by any means, but the typical kind of American muscle aesthetic to me has always I've always been obsessed with it. I can't tell you like things, you know, how that car works exactly, but I can tell you like it sounds beautiful. It makes me happy every time I start it up, and you know, I go find this freaking Iowa corn road back road, and I rip that thing for like, you know, half a mile, and I'm just like, this thing makes me so happy. It's one of those things where it's just like you spend a lot of money on and a lot of things in life, you know, you sometimes regret that, but just like that car is not one of those things. Literally makes me happy every time I drive it.
Another intuitive lens or ancestral lens to be looking at. What did we used to do all the time? Gallop on horses,
Yeah.
like fucking just
Yeah.
right. And I definitely think there's something to be said for that. Specifically, men.
Yeah.
There's something about that the speed it speaks to us and it at like a core level. So I think
Yeah.
there's something to that as well.
It's very recent. It's very recent in my my ancestral lineage that we were on horseback, like literally hunting buffalo. So like within the last 100 years. So
Yeah.
I have that innately wired within me for sure. I could see that. So
Yeah. And then even to go back to the Mexico, like four wheelers and ATV or four wheelers and motorbikes, like that's
yeah.
so, there's just something about it. It's also maybe the level of risk, but even the
Mhm.
driving on the corn road. I want to talk on that a little bit. I saw this quote. It might have been Brother Lobo or whatever it is on Twitter,
Mhm.
talking about how driving can legitimately be therapeutic, but in the right environment, like driving in the city of Atlanta. I'm
Yeah.
the opposite of therapeutic. I'm becoming more stressed. Like I fucking hate everybody by the time I'm back
Yeah.
home. But then you go on a hill country drive in Texas, or
Yeah.
you go in these cornfields and you just
Yeah.
let it rip. Something
Yeah.
really does happen. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's a good mix of exhilaration with the scenic environment, and that's why I like kind of being where I'm at, and I like it's not super conducive to somebody kind of running a footwear and education business that's focused on grounding, but it's just like I'm in like the suburbs outside of a city, and I'm kind of pretty much out a little bit bordering the country, but I'm able to drive 3 minutes away and find these back roads and just kind of hang out and just rip the car around and not worry about other vehicles and stoplights and all that. It's that's one of the nice things about Iowa is definitely the openness to it. There's not a lot in Iowa. I mean, as far as like, you know, there's nothing really here that attracts people. But part of it is it's home to me. It's where I spent a lot of my life. So there's a lot of cool things about it like that are nice to have. So
Yeah, we were talking about Montana a little bit. Have you been out there recently?
I was in Missoula, Montana in 2016. I was out there for a couple weeks for a work conference, and oh my gosh, man, I fell in love. I love that place.
It's incredible.
It was like this little, and I was out there at a good time too. I'm not, I forgot, I forget when I was out there, but it was a really good time as far as like weather and just vegetation and all that. And I was out there, and it was like this little bowl surrounded by these freaking like Jurassic Park mountains, and it was just like I rented a bike out there, and I was just like biking on the roads, like the highways or through the mountains, and there were like these goofy little bars downtown with just like the weirdest people. Just like it's like a really weird collection of people out there.
Oh yeah, Missoula specifically. So yeah, I was just there literally a week and a half ago, and the reason I brought that up is because I think it kind of relates to what you're talking about in terms of space. Something about I made this comparison. Like when I'm driving in Atlanta, number one, it'll take me an hour and I'll be able to go, let's say 20 miles. You go there, you drive an hour and you're going 60, 70, 80 miles. And it also doesn't feel like if I drove an hour in the city of Atlanta, I would feel stressed. I'm like, damn, dude, I just wasted time. But out there, dude, I drove to national parks, driving different fishing spots. And it's just like, I don't feel like I'm wasting any time. Something about it is just, it just feels so much better. So, I mean, I'm all for the Missoula, Montana, dude. That it's a cool place.
It's the real therapy. It's the real therapy.
It really is. And you mentioned footwear company, and this all kind of stems back to grounding. I'm curious, did GAIA, what does GAIA stand for actually, now that I think grounded?
Gaia is the Greek goddess of the earth.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking there's some acronym.
Yeah, no, it's Gaia. Yeah. It's not an acronym. It's something that I really liked as a kid growing up, especially like when I was in high school and middle school and stuff. I always loved learning about Greek mythology, and so I kind of kept that aesthetic with a lot of the stuff that I create. And I'm kind of sticking with that with beyond sandals into shoes and stuff with Ares. Ares is the Greek god of war, and then I got a few other projects that are kind of in that same vein. So I really enjoy Greek mythology, and it's just a very fantastical and kind of a delightful experience to immerse yourself in those kinds of stories. So.
Absolutely. And to get into Gaia a little bit. So grounding sandals popping off right now. I do not have a pair, so I can't speak on them. I've heard really good things, but what's the science behind those? Like, how do those work?
So Gaia sandals, they're made with, I'll start with this. They're made with a rubber sole. And on top of that rubber sole, you have leather. So full grain leather from Texas. I get from there. So why are they grounding sandals? Why do they ground you? They utilize two of the best conductors in the world. One of those is copper. Another one is silver. These are two of the best known conductors on the planet. And so how this works is there's a copper plate installed at the bottom of this rubber sole, and there's a strap that wraps around your ankle. Within that strap, there's a silver conductive thread that's rated at 10 ohms per centimeter, which is a very, very low resistance. So that means electrical energy can pass through it very easily. And so that silver conductive thread is connected to that copper plate on the bottom of that sole. The silver is just me being bougie. It wasn't necessary, because
Sounds
really
cool.
yeah, it sounds really cool, and it's nice to have. But that leather that's on the top of the sole, it's already conductive. So it
Leather is
being
conductive.
yeah, so
Okay.
leather, that's a big reason that a lot of people in evolution, like as far from an evolutionary standpoint, we're grounded with leather footwear, is because leather is conductive, especially when people are sweating in it.
Oh, because
But
it's wet, like you mentioned. That makes
yeah,
sense.
yep. And then that leather is in contact with that copper. So that right there, you're good to go. And so I just wanted like a nice little extra element. So I added the silver. So it's
Do you weave the silver in there yourself, or is that something that you
I
get?
sew. I do all of it. I sew all that
Dude.
silver in there. Like it's everything's me right now. I won't be doing the shoes, but yeah, the sandals have been me for the last 4 years. Every aspect of that sandal that people get, like it's literally one of the rawest forms of handmade and handcrafted like you can get. So
Which I wrote that down. I want to touch on that, man, because that's a lost art. That
yeah,
is art artisans are lost nowadays. Like there really is a drought for those people that are making things by hand.
yeah,
Even though I guarantee you that you would be making a lot more money if you outsource that 100%,
absolutely.
like with certainty, you would make a shit ton more money,
Mhm.
but it would be lost. Something about it just wouldn't be the same. The story wouldn't be as congruent. I wouldn't appreciate them as much. Other people surely wouldn't as well. What does why is that something that you decided to kind of die on at this point in your life, that hill of making them by hand? Because you post these stories where you're like, you're cutting out the insoles, you're cutting out the
Yeah,
leather, you're sewing, you're doing all of it. So like, why is
yeah,
that something that you're so
yeah.
bought into?
I'm being really kind of, in a way, I'm being stupid about it because like I should be outsourcing it to other people. And how I see it is that that is what's going to happen. It's an eventuality. I'm just kind of holding on to it for as long as I can have it, and just kind of like I want to experience it as much as I possibly can, just being involved with this process, because there's a lot of people out there, I think, that get these sandals because of the energy that I put into them, and they can actually see that energy being put into them. They could see it in video. They can see me talking about it, and there's something in me that's gonna die a little bit once I give it to other people, and that's kind of the this, I guess, the sad way of looking at it, but I I'm a kind of a workhorse, man. I'm able to get quite a few out like on a weekly basis. But yeah, I'm at the point where I gotta like start looking at local high schoolers or something to part time jobs and stuff, or just find someone on the other side of the country or the world that's able to take in this workshop and be able to make this where they're at. But I just I haven't had time right now to really like teach people the craft, because like, dude, it took me like 300 pairs for me to like get it right. So there's like a lot of things you have to figure out as far as like troubleshooting certain issues. If something something goes wrong, like how do you fix it? Like there's so many little minute details that you have to teach someone and train somebody to be able to work with. So eventually, when I have the time, I'm going to be training some people, and I will be outsourcing it in its eventuality. But right now, I'm just kind of I'm enjoying it while I have it. So
Yeah. Well, first off, I got to commend you, man, because I really do think that there's very few people, like we're just in a world right now, specifically in America, where corporate greed, like greed is everything. It's how can I get more profit, more profit, more profit, and people outsource all these
yeah,
things to other parts of the world, to the point where we have like no manufacturing infrastructure or knowledge in America anymore. And
yeah,
so what I don't want to speak it into your life, but maybe bring up a point. Maybe that's part of your mission is to teach other people that, like, when you get
yeah,
to the point where it's no longer the leverage is not there for you to be doing it. You get to impart that knowledge on, instead of it's just you have 10 other people that now know how, and then they can fall in love with it and they can do. So it's just that cool spiderweb effect, I think. And I got to commend you, man. I think the handmade products. I spoke with a dude last week who makes axes. And he's like,
Yeah.
dude, people don't need axe handles. Like, they don't need a handmade axe handle. Fiberglass is probably a better product.
Yeah.
But he's like, something about it people love. They just love the fact that my hands were on it. They know the story of me and they associate that with the product. So
Yeah.
I got to commend you for that.
Everything that we get these days it's automated. Some robot's gonna make it. There's kind of this lifeless aspect of it. And when you hold something in your hand that's you can see is handmade, you gain a little bit more hope. You gain a little bit more hope in mankind and humankind. We're just like, oh, we still make like these little cool things, you know. They're not super advanced things by any means, but people still make things with their own hands. So
Absolutely. And I think maybe it was Case Bradford or somebody on Twitter recently talked about how you say the cattle that you eat, like the beef, you're inheriting that energy, whatever they're treated with, whatever they grow up with. If it's like these stressful environments where they have a foot of space, the absolute travesty that is industrial cattle raising and all these things, you're inheriting that. But you have a cattle or a cow that's grazing on natural pastures and living this natural life, this not stress free, but like not a overwhelmingly stressful environment. You're inheriting that energy from the food as well. And I think the same can be said for products. And that might sound a little foo-foo, but I totally believe it, man. I really do believe that the things that we hold, the things that we wear, the things that we eat, we are consuming not just the nutrients or the utility of those products. We're consuming the energy that we're put into them. So I'm inclined to support somebody like yourself making it by hand in Iowa as opposed to like slave labor in China. So
I agree, man. That's beautiful. I 100%. That is the truth.
You mentioned Aries. So these are sandals. GAIAs are sandals. What's going on with Aries? I don't know if you're releasing a lot of stuff about that, but I'm curious.
Aries is a shoe. So Aries is a grounding shoe. It's not going to be utilizing copper, which is what a lot of brands utilize. It's kind of its own one-of-kind mechanism. So I'll probably be making my first order for Aries in the next month and a half here, and I'll be sending those out to some of my favorite people in the social media atmosphere, and that'll get them out there. But really, really cool project, and I'm super excited for it. And really, kind of my whole goal with it is like, yeah, it's gonna be like a sick ass shoe. Like I got it designed and everything. Like, and it's it'll be really cool. But I'm hoping what this initiates is that a lot of other companies kind of like start to move in this direction too. And so eventually we'll all have like these grounded shoes, and they won't be insulating anymore. And then people, when people start seeing these grounded shoes, then they're going to start asking the question, what's grounding? And then people find out about grounding, and it's just like this whole movement that ultimately helps everybody. So Aries is a casual athletic sneaker that's hopefully I'll be having out by the end of this year here. So
very cool, dude. I'm pumped for that. That's awesome. And you're exactly right. The spark that it engages in people could be like that. I'm always so fascinated by like how people's lives change. And I always bring up this reference. My buddy Alvin, who was early on in the podcast, he was a veteran, or he is a veteran, and he had a son, and his whole entire family's lives changed for the eternity, for as long as his bloodline exists, because he started looking into baby soaps, and he realized that all these chemicals and all these things, and now he's into this massively holistic lifestyle and health now because of baby soaps. So my point is, maybe that shoe, like you just mentioned, maybe it's like, what is grounding? Okay, well, what is inflammation? Well, what other things can I be doing? What am I eating? So that's really cool, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Chain reaction events. And and I put a letter in every order of the sandals, and it's just like, it's basically a little synopsis, of how grounding works. I'm just like, people are going to ask you like, what these things are. And so like, here's your script. Like, this is what you got. Yeah, this is what you tell them. And because I try to keep grounding, the main message. It's nice that I was able to make a business out of this and I can make a living out of this. But like, really, the reason I started doing this is because I wanted to help people. Like, I had lost people to chronic non-communicable disease, and it really, really sucked knowing that I could have helped, but if I just knew about this stuff earlier, is that I was able to provide them with grounding mats. But I was able to convince them to spend more time outside barefoot. Like, these things would absolutely 100% have helped them. And really, that claws at me, but it also motivates me. So that's a big reason that I do what I do, and why I take it so seriously, and why I put so much effort into the content that I put out, into the educational stuff that I put out, because it's really, really important to me, and I think it'll help a lot of people.
Therein lies the hope that you were talking about when somebody holds your shoe. You mentioned it like kind of makes us hopeful. I think that's why, because of it's literally exactly what you just said. The intention behind every single shoe that you put in, or that you put into every shoe, is exactly what you just mentioned. And that is something that you get from a shoe like yours, not from a Nike shoe or some big name shoe that's made by a slave. It's like, dude, I can't commend you enough. That's awesome.
And
Um,
I've already, I get messages every day that are of people who's just like, I started doing this like every day, and my life is just like changed completely. And I'm just like, yeah, there we go. Like, those are what like keep me going. So like, if you're listening to this and you send me one of those messages, I guarantee like it'll absolutely make my day, because those are my favorite messages. But really, like, it's such it's such a cool thing, because like I get to make cool shit, but it also helps people. So like, that's like exactly where you want to be. I think it's like, it's
yeah,
super, super fun, and it's really meaningful. So
absolutely. It's that the balance, or what's the like the middle of the yin and yang, where it's you're making money, you're providing a life for yourself while you're making something that you actually enjoy making while it's helping somebody else. So I mean, pretty much a win-win-win.
and I get to be super genuine with like all my stuff. Like, I think a lot. So one of the big messages I get is about like marketing, and like the branding and all that. Just like, because I don't really like know a ton about that stuff. I make stuff, and I stick my logo on it, and I try and make it cool. But there, like, a lot of people are just like, I love how you do your marketing and your branding and all that. But it's just like, yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to do that stuff. I think a lot of it comes down to just like authenticity and being genuine. So like, me, so like, one thing that I probably do that's wrong and right is I stick my personality like in everything that I do. And so like, one tweet I'm talking about interfactual water, and another tweet I'm talking about e-girls, like, like
Being a Lakota
yeah.
fuck machine.
Yeah. SRT Lakota fuck machine, like stuff like that. It's just like, I like to have fun. Like,
Oh
none of
god.
this like would be worth it if I like wasn't having fun too. Like, that's an important part of it. And I see a lot of brands, I see a lot of a lot of health gurus out there that they just they turn into robots, and they start repeating everything that this other guy is saying, and they might change a word here or there, but it's kind of the same thing, just kind of being regurgitated. And it's like, and I saw this tweet the other day, and who is like that herbivore Aurelius guy, and he's just like, uh and it showed like four tweets below it. They're all the exact same tweet. I was just like, oh my god, you guys, like, there's no genuineness in what you do, and like, you gotta switch it up like a little bit, and really make it your own, because I think that's what's gonna draw people to you. So
Well, yeah, the your style of marketing, I would compare it to Van Man in a way, like just by comparison. Van Man popped off because his branding was literally just him posting memes about the shit that he believed. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like some curated marketing plan that he hired some New York firm to do. It was literally just like, I hate big toothpaste. Let's rip this thing, and people buy into it, because I was having this conversation with Noah as well. There's like the the smoke between the product and what we perceive in between. Like, this is the brand, the product,
yeah,
and then us, everything we perceive about the product is the brand. And when
yeah,
it's these huge businesses, it's just so foggy, we have like no idea what's going on. But
yeah,
for example, like you or Van Man, or I mean, Vance, another great example, it's like super clear. It's like, oh, I'm here. The brand, oh, I know like Vance is this guy. This is what Vance does. This is what Vance believes. He puts it into this product, and I buy the product. And
Yeah.
so it's just it's a much more authentic and genuine purchasing experience from a consumer's perspective as well. And
And
it's interesting you mentioned the word authentic. I literally have that written down. Did you want to touch on that?
no, I was just gonna
Uh,
say, I think it's like super important for you to, be able to see the people that create these things that you're buying, or that you're following. Like, are they living this lifestyle? Like, are they actually embodying it? Because I guarantee there's a lot of people that follow me because, like, I live out that grounded athlete lifestyle. Like, that is me. Um, and that's very important for people to do, because, like, if you know carnivore, really, this could be run by a little skinny girl, like, that
yeah,
doesn't go to the gym ever. Like, no one ever knows. So, like, there's definitely that anonymity with a lot of accounts, but I think it's super important to be following and engaged with people that are actually living out what they're teaching and what they're trying to guide people to do. And that's a big thing that I try and emphasize too. Is just like, I can do all of these things, I can teach all of these things, and make all of these things, but if I'm not embodying it, if people can't see that in me when they see me, like, that's a big problem there.
absolutely. And I think that speaks to the success that your business is having because people
Yeah.
can see that. And the reason I wrote down authentic is you obviously I've never met you in person. We're an hour into conversation. I feel blessed to be able to have that. But even from like a Twitter perspective, you don't see tweets like your tweets, which a tweet is literally just a conglomeration of words that you chose to put in a specific order. You don't see those very often. So that's why people are like, oh, what the hell is this guy
Yeah.
about? Right? Like Lakota fuck machine. What are you talking about? Like thanking God, like one of your prayers in Mexico for Latina something. I was
Yeah.
dying, bro. And dude, I got to tell you this too. Me and my brother were laughing. I responded to Vance or something like that, or maybe it was I posted a video of me and him rolling on some grass. We were training jiu-jitsu on some grass, and
Yeah.
I think Vance replied, and then you replied to Vance, and you said, "Motherfucker's grounded." I don't even know what you said. I just laughed my ass off, dude, because um, it's just a unique it's a unique way that you like impose yourself or exude like what you believe. So I wanted to speak on that, or I wanted you to speak on that a little bit, if you don't mind, like the authenticity part and like how you go about doing that. Is there like you kind of just tweet whatever the fuck comes to your mind? Do you like
No, yeah, and going back to what I said earlier, it's just like I do a lot of things wrong with my business, but I also do a lot of things right. One of those things that's right, and one of those things that's wrong, is my authenticity, like, in my personality and everything that I do. So, like, it's like a little curveball when people get a really complex topic of the biophysics of grounding, and then a day later they get something about Lakota fuck machine in his car. So and that's nice too. It keeps people on their toes. But I think there's definitely something that can be learned from that too. I think of a lot more guys that just stuck. I mean, if they have a good personality, a fun personality, entertaining, and they can incorporate that into what they're doing, they can see a lot of success in what they do. Because again, going back to what I said earlier, a lot of guys, they turn into robots after a little bit. It becomes like this just automated thing, and copywriting is a really big thing right now, and I don't know if I'll ever get into that. I don't know if I'd ever like outsource that to somebody else, because I like being the voice for what I do. And people can see when I'm involved with something. Like, they can see like little details and like how I say something and how I make something or how I create some illustration. They'll see a little bit of me in that, and I don't want to give that up to somebody else. But yeah, I how people see me in on my videos and everything that I post, it's the same thing. Like, if you met me out like on the street or something, like, I'm gonna be just as much of like a tard, like, nerd, like everything, like nothing changes. But I think that's a big part of embodying what you do. Like, you are that person. Like, it's going to be the same, in this conversation, us over the computer on this podcast, as it is, us meeting on the street somewhere in the steam room or something. So yeah, it's a very important aspect of running your own thing.
It's perhaps actually unironic that you're wearing a shirt that's unbuttoned right now, because the way I think about that is like society, specifically like the corporate Western, it's like the program that we're all fed through, specifically through public high schools. It's like, you got to be buttoned up. You got to go to college. You got to be more buttoned up. You got to go to this corporate job. You got to be buttoned up. You better not tell people what you actually think, because then you could get fired, and then blah, blah, blah. So it's like this buttoned up, like nobody really exposes themselves. Like nobody knows who the fuck anybody really is, because it's just all this facade. And it's the same can be said on social media. There's plenty. I mean, that's why I love Twitter. I think it's less prevalent on Twitter. Instagram can be a little bit like just superficial in my opinion, but I think that's kind of where it stems from.
I love Twitter. Like, it's so fun. And I think it's a lot better than Instagram, because like it's much more, it's harder to be successful on Twitter, because like on Instagram, like you post cool shit and you'll get followers, but it's just like on Twitter, it's a little bit harder. Like if you're successful on Twitter, it says more about you, because like you're competing with other people's minds on Twitter. Like on Instagram, you're competing with photos. So like if people follow you because of your mind, that's a good feeling. Like people like the way you think. So I think that's one of the cool things that I like about Twitter. And then you said something else about kind of living that buttoned up lifestyle. That kind of sucks, and that's what I hated about and my mom and dad would tell me that too. It's just like you need to act a certain way, and they had good intentions behind that, obviously, but you need to present yourself in a certain way, so this employer who could like literally give a shit about me and hire me and literally replace me 5 days later after he fires me. And it's just like I hated the idea of being told what to do for the rest of my life. And so there was that aspect of me doing what I'm doing too. It's just like I don't want to be like another cog. I don't want to be like a puppy for somebody and just constantly being told what to do by someone who may not even be as competent as I am. Like I could never live with myself or go to bed like comfortably with myself knowing something like that. So yeah.
100% agree. And I'm reminded of, I do want to lay this out first. I think the military is a different animal altogether, because there's just different consequences. But like there's Absolutely. Grown men, because the reason I say that is because in the military, there's many branches of the military that you have to be clean shaven, you have to button up. Mm-hmm. That being said, the very best people, top tier one, like special operations, they generally can do like they'll have beards, they'll have long hair, they'll wear whatever the fuck they want, to my understanding. But there's grown men in the world that go to a job at a corporate company that do not grow a beard on their face or have a specific haircut because of the fear of getting fired for that. And to me, that is an optic that I just totally 100% disalign with. Like, how the fuck are you as a grown man gonna not grow a beard because another grown man told you not to? Because you could get fired from the job that you mentioned will literally get replaced. It's probably days after. So that's just like an example. It's like, dude, I just don't, I've never vibed with that. I've never, it's never been something, I think we align in that way. It's never been something that I ever felt called to do. And I'm not speaking down on it. Both my parents, similar to you, they've been supportive of me, but they both work what I would consider corporate jobs. And it's just part of the
if you like what you do, if you enjoy what you do, like there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm not trying to talk shit about people that, work 9 to 5s or anything. It's just like, if you actually like what you do, you like the people that you work with, you have an actual like good employer that cares about you. That's a blessing in itself. But just like, that's something I never felt called towards. I wanted to join the military after I got out of college. And then like I started to understand myself a little bit more. I was like, wow, you really hate being told what to do. Like you would probably hate it in there. It's like you're just constantly being told what to do. But at the same time, sometimes in life you have to play the game a little bit. You have to play the game a little bit before you can make your own game. And that's just the way it is. Sometimes that's what you got to do. So
You got to go through society
yeah,
to be able to be on the other side. Like you have to go through the games that society presents you with to be able to make up your own games, I guess.
exactly.
The book, dude, you've mentioned on the book and you're kind of teasing it out on socials and stuff like that. So I don't know how much you want to get into that, but what's the story behind that, man? It seems like a really interesting project.
Yeah, we can get into whatever aspect you want to get into about it. It's a super exciting book. It's called Earth and Water. It's called Earth and Water. It's a short story of life's matrix. There's a lot in that title that can be expanded upon, but essentially, it's a very dense book. It's filled with a ton of illustrations, really, really beautiful illustrations that I put a lot of effort into, and it's a good mix of textbook style book mixed with a story mixed with art. So it's so many things like packed into one. Nothing out there exists like it. That's why I'm so excited for it. And there's a ton of people out there that are excited for it. And I'm thinking I'm going to send it out to some really kind of prominent figures in my life to pre-read it before I put it out. But I think they're going to love it. I love it. It was kind of a pain in the ass to write and get done and all that, but it all paid off. It came together beautifully. But what is the book? It's a lot of people have referred to it as the grounding Bible from what I put out on it, and it's how grounding affects the body. It's how grounding affects the body, the various systems in the body, the water in the body, and it's split up into 4 different parts. You have part 1, which is introduction. It goes over all of your introductory material, like the Earth circuit. How can you ground? Why can you ground? Why is this possible? Evolutionary grounding, insulated organisms. And then from there, you go into part 2, which is how grounding affects all the physiological systems in your body, the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, the skeletal system, the matrix. Then you move into part 3, which is earth and water. It's all about how grounding affects the water in your body, which is a very, very dense part of the book as well. And that's a very important part of the book. And it's why I called the book Earth and Water. And then from there, you go into part 4, which is earth application. How can you apply this in your life? So it's looking to be around 650 pages. It's a very, very unique piece of work, and I'm super excited for it.
How long have you been working on that?
2 years. Been working on it for 2 years, and it's done. It's done, and it's been done for quite some time. It's just like I've just been I want it to be really, really good, so I've just been kind of adding like things here and there, or if I find like a new piece of information that I want to add. But I have to accept at some point, like this is going to be what it is. And like, that's always what sucks about, making something like this is that, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road, like something might change. And then, I have this thing, I can't take it back, which kind of sucks. But, I think a lot of the stuff in there is super, super solid. I made it for the grounding enthusiast, and I made it for the grounding doubter. Because really, if you read it and you read it front to back, you're going to be like, wow, this like grounding goes so much deeper than I thought it went. And it's so much more like grounded, pun intended, in science. And it'll definitely take that person that's on the border of not believing and believing, and kind of like push them into believing that this is actually a thing that can help them.
I'm stoked, dude. I didn't know really any of that. I knew it was called Earth and Water, but that's exciting, dude. I'm pumped to get my hands on one. What's the writing process been like? Because I want to actually kind of extrapolate first before I ask that question. This is to go back to what I meant at the beginning.
Yeah.
So you're a high level sprinter. You're a kickboxer, a martial artist. You're an engine, as you as you say.
Yes.
You have a physics background. You're an entrepreneur, and you're writing a book. So it's like all these things. I want to ask you about the writing actually later. How do you manage the workload? Like how does that seems like an absurd amount of work.
Um, I just don't sleep. I just don't sleep, and I struggle to make myself food at the end of the day when I'm all done. Um, yeah, I mean, some days it kind of sucks because like I'm trying to balance so many things, and sometimes it gets to be a lot. And there was a point in my career, like a year ago, where I was just like, this is just what it's gonna be. Like it is what it is. I'm gonna have to work through this, and I'm gonna have to suffer a little bit. I'm gonna have to suffer a little bit, and then I get my work done. I get all these projects done, and then I could take a little breather. But right now, it's something that I've accepted. It's gonna suck at times. It's gonna be hard. But yeah, it can be tough at times, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart, because whenever I talk to my friends or anything about my lifestyle and how I do things and how I balance things, they're just like, holy shit, how are you doing this? And I'm just like, I don't know how I do it, but I figured out a way to do it over the last 4 years. So it's and I'm doing okay. Like sometimes there's a lot of work, and that's okay. At least I can work. At least I have work to do. So, and I'm able to do that work. So,
You said that in the video the other day. Thankful for like the fact that I can work and that I have work to do, because that's something that a lot of people don't have.
I'm healthy enough to move my body and be able to make cool shit, and I have a computer that I can write off of. I have internet. Like all this work I have to do, they don't mean anything. Like I have all these tools at my disposal. I have my health. It's really like I think a lot of it just comes down to going back to just being grateful. I'm grateful that I can do all this stuff. I'm grateful that I'm so busy. Like I have all these things I get to work on. Like instead of like thinking I have all these things I have to do, is like I have all these things I get to do. Like I am blessed enough to be able to do these things.
It's like a paradigm shift from there's all these things that are taking my energy to look at all these things that I get to pour my energy into.
Yes, exactly.
Which sounds like that's the paradigm that you choose to use.
Yeah.
The one thing that Noah Ryan spoke about a long time ago on Twitter that really it was instrumental to me. He talked about being resilient, not neurotic. And I think you're a pretty good example of that. I mean, I've seen you, obviously, I forgot the name of the tobacco already, but like you have a video on your Twitter or something about like smoking tobacco and kind of just like telling people to fuck off. And then you posted pictures. Like how do you balance that between being like resilient and not being neurotic about, like, you want to be healthy, obviously, but you don't want to become neurotic about your health or optimizing. How do you balance that?
This may not be as elegant of an answer as you like, but my time here on Earth is very short, Nolan. Like I don't have a lot of time to do the things that I want to do and enjoy my life. I enjoy drinking alcohol. I enjoy whiskey. I enjoy wine. I love tobacco. I love nicotine. All of these things are amazing. I'll have a super shitty ass meal like once or twice a month, and it tastes really good and I love it. These are all things that enhance my life, and I'm not going to give those things up just because like of monk mode grind set. Like I could be dead next week, and I know if I died next week and I denied myself all these things like leading up to that point, I'm gonna be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why didn't you live your life? Like, enjoy it a little bit. You can accomplish amazing things in life. You can be an amazing athlete. You can be an amazing whatever you're doing in life and still enjoy these things. It's just like a lot of it comes down to being an adult and knowing when's enough, how to moderate it, and seeing things as tools. Alcohol is a great creative tool for me. Tobacco is a great creative tool for me. I don't see things too much as pleasures as opposed to tools. Like, and I grew up in a very tobacco centric culture. Like I was smoking a fucking tobacco pipe, like when I was a toddler, like with like in ceremonies. But all of these things, you can't be too obsessed with pinpointing these tiny little details and just like trying to perfect everything, because you're going to go to bed every night a little disappointed in yourself. So like control what you can control, and then anything beyond that, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Life goes on. You don't need to be, Huberman optimizer 1000%, every day of your life. You got to learn to live your life. And to me, having a glass of whiskey, once or twice a week, having some tobacco, tear the filter off, eat a super fatty ass piece of steak with, maybe some fries with it or something. It's just like, I those are the things that make me really, really enjoy life. And I'm not going to deny myself those things.
Abraham Lincoln once said, "A man with no vices often has no virtues."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Perhaps there's some truth in that.
100%. I 100% agree. And I'm pretty transparent about mine too. So
Yeah. No, I mean, but that's the thing. Cause like people, the reason I asked that question and the reason that paradigm like hit me so hard is because I've mentioned this many times. I believe that I became neurotic in college about baseball. Like I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. I was like obsessed to the point of neuroticism, where if I didn't get 8.5 hours of sleep, then I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to pitch well, or some random shit like that. And I always use this example too. My 5th year at VCU, I literally like stopped caring. Like I just like didn't care anymore. I still worked. Like I worked hard, but I allowed myself to go to bed later, to wake up a little later, to drink a little bit more, to have more fun, all these things. And it was the best year I ever had. And I use this example too. My brother got married one weekend, so I missed the weekend series. And we played UVA, who was like one of our rivals, a very big school, very good at baseball, that Tuesday. So I had drank Thursday, Friday, Saturday, a little bit on Sunday, got like literally 3 to 6 hours of sleep every night. Get back. I didn't throw a baseball one time. I get back to, and the reason I'm saying this is because this was a really instrumental point in my life. I realized something changed in my psyche. I get back, I throw really shittily on Monday. So I threw one time in 5 days. On Tuesday, I had one of the best games I ever had, and we ended up knocking off one of the best teams in the country in extra innings, and I got the win. And I literally had this moment where I was like, I've been duping myself. Like I've literally been tricking myself into thinking that I have to have this, and this lined up. And I came up with this, I told my coach, and then I wrote it down. Things affect us the way that we believe they'll affect us at large. There's some nuance to that, but that's to me what you're speaking about right now. And I think that it's a powerful paradigm.
All up here. A lot of it's up here. Is this cigarette with the filter broken off anabolic? Yes, I believe it is, because I believe it is, and I will it to be so. And really, a lot of it just comes down to how are you perceiving things. You really, and this is getting really metaphysical, but you manifest your reality. So what you think is gonna be, and I've found that to be very true throughout my own life.
I 100% agree. And that example for me is the most stark example in my life. And that's literally what I remember thinking. I was like, holy fuck, I'm an idiot, bro. Like I've been tricking myself for 3.5 years and it didn't even work. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so 2 questions and then we can wrap it up. Number 1, I mean, you have all these projects all centered around grounding more or less, but what's the grounded athlete vision? Like what's your vision for the future for what you got going on?
I want grounding to be a household remedy. I want grounding to be a household remedy for the entire world. And, when people think of, when people get sick, they think of something, all these common remedies, these medicines and stuff. I want grounding to be in that toolbox of tools that can help you. And I want it to be just more commonplace among people. And then along with that, I want to change the footwear industry. And that's because that's easily the biggest thing that's insulating people from the earth is its shoes. So I need to get that message to the world, and I need to get that message through these shoes, because through those shoes, I have the potential to change a lot of things in the world. Not everything that's wrong with it, but a big part that's wrong with it, which is electrical disconnection from the earth.
Phenomenal. A worthy mission, I would say. And it kind of stems into the question I wrap up every podcast with: the Tyro experience. Tyro means novice or beginner. It stems from the Latin word meaning young soldier. To me, a Tyro is someone who is in an arena. Your arena is going to be different than mine, different from Joe's or Nick's. They're in the arena, they're standing firm, they pick up their sword, and they're running towards the middle, and they're fighting like a motherfucker, because the way that I mean, it's literally just a fight for your life. So my question to you is, what arena are you in? You kind of just answered it, but like, what are you fighting for? Like, you may have just spoken on that, but if you want to expound.
My arena is an arena full of people that want to continue to insulate the earth. Not consciously, I would say. I would hope not. But I am at war with people that are taking mankind from their electrical roots that God has blessed us with. You know, Genesis 2:7, God created man from the dust of the ground. Into his nostrils he breathed the breath of life. And so what I am doing is God's mission for me. I am returning God's people to this electrical earth that he has made to be healing for us. And so I am at war with the people that continue to make insulating footwear, that continue to insulate us and further exacerbate what's killing everybody: chronic non-communicable disease, which is very much exacerbated by insulation. So those are the people that I am fighting, and I'm trying to ultimately change how they perceive things and how they go about making things for people. So hope that made sense.
It did. And like I said before, it's a worthy mission and a worthy fight. I'm stoked for you, man. You got a lot of cool projects right now. Stoked for the book, stoked to get my hands on some Aries and some guys here at some point soon. I really appreciate it, man. Any last words, anything you want to say? Other than get grounded.
No, I always like to talk about, I always like to end on a good quote, and that is, illness arises from small daily sins against nature. So when enough of those sins accumulate, that's when disease occurs. And ironically, that was the father of medicine, Hippocrates, that said that. And I say ironic because we live in a very disconnected medicine culture, healthcare culture, that really needs to return to nature. And grounding is one of those ways that medicine needs to return to nature.
Very cool. Right on. And where can people find you, Rob?
Twitter, The Grounded Athlete, and Instagram, The Grounded Athlete. My website, if you Google search The Grounded Athlete, it'll be the first thing that pops up. On that website, you'll find everything you could possibly want to learn about grounding. Research articles, all the posts that I've made, blog posts, videos, podcasts that I've been on, everything is on that website.
Right on. Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely, man. It's awesome.
And with that, I hope y'all enjoyed the conversation with Rob. What a phenomenal, well-rounded hour and 45 minutes that was. We talked about grounding, his story, growing up on a reservation, his athletic pursuits, his entrepreneurial pursuits. And I think we got a lot covered, man. I hope y'all really enjoyed this one, because I surely did. I hope you find some value in it. Check out Rob on all the things that he mentioned. He's a great follow on Twitter. If you guys have Twitter and want to be exposed to some comedic insights that are pretty profound. But really enjoyed this one. Hope y'all found some value in it. Until next time, stand firm in the arena.